What'd you think?
Anytime I get to listen to biased propaganda, I'm all in.
It was a good talk.
Seriously though, it was good.
Hello, everyone. So David, Aimee, and I went to a talk where Matt Walsh gave a talk on abortion, homosexuality, and transgenderism. For me, it was my first experience at all with Matt Walsh.
What do you know about Matt Walsh?
I know he's controversial. That's about it. I know people that really don't like him. I'm interested to see what happens.
They should have a popcorn machine in the back.
Yes.
Hit me up, man. I'm so ready. I love popcorn.
I was a little more prepared. I actually would read a lot of his articles. He writes for The Blaze. It's Glenn Beck's website. It's very apparent that he's very blunt about a lot of things, especially these issues, which are very hot button, controversial issues.
Matt is well known for his controversial and provocative insights into culture, politics, and religion.
He really gets down to the core of the matter, and honestly, I would say the truth.
His profile on The Blaze, his tagline is, "I'm an extremist if the truth is considered extreme."
I mean, accurate.
He is also Catholic, so I really admire him in being able to speak the truth about what's happening in our society. So having that faith and reason meet was just like perfect, because that's how I live my life.
Is he on Twitter right now?
I think one of the things that really took me off guard a little bit, especially considering, knowing people that do not like Matt Walsh, was the fact that he seemed to be a very simple man. A lot of times, especially when you hear somebody, a lot of people don't like, you think, oh, like yelling, shouting, screaming, and that's not exactly what Matt Walsh was like. He spoke humbly at the very beginning.
It's great to be here. My name is Matt Walsh, as that's been covered. Or as I'm known by many conservative college groups, the cheaper Ben Shapiro.
And when he was saying stuff, he wasn't yelling it. He was being very simple about it, saying this is the way that it is. We went to the talk in the J.C. Williams Center at Franciscan University. Well attended and pretty favorable crowd for him to be coming into. He's mentioned before that he's gone to Catholic universities, kind of like
More
Catholic in name
than
yeah.
actual practice.
Now, I know being a Catholic university by no means usually does that indicate that there's any Catholicism going on in the university. But in this case, I'm aware that this is a Catholic university that has the gall to actually be Catholic, which is incredible.
So again, the actual talk was about abortion, gay marriage, and transgenderism. And especially when he first started talking about abortion, it's something I really appreciated when I was in high school, giving some talks to different groups and trying to raise money for the pregnancy center in our area. It's something that I kind of stress a lot. People underestimate how important the abortion issue specifically is.
Across the world, there are 50 million abortions every year. So if you do the math, that means that since you guys were born, 1 billion babies have been slaughtered by abortion the world over. In 100 years, ISIS could not kill as many humans as the abortion industry does in 1 year. Abortion takes more lives worldwide in a year than the Nazis exterminated in the entire existence of the Third Reich. If you believe that unborn babies are human beings, which of course they are, and science leaves no room for debate on that subject, then you can't point to a single issue that's more urgent or a single threat more severe than abortion.
We really don't think about that enough, and we don't understand the gravity of that.
You don't see it. Like, I heard a quote once saying that if the womb had a window, this wouldn't be an issue. Yeah.
Another thing I really appreciated, he wasn't just like completely focusing on the left wing on things. He was just like, a lot of people that call themselves like right-wing conservative Christians focus too much on guns and the economy and just kind of poo-poo the whole abortion issue.
Conservatives pivot away from, I should mention, important cultural issues, but they're more than happy to spend 13 months screaming about professional athletes who don't exhibit proper posture during the national anthem. Now, that's the kind of thing we'll talk about. Does anyone check to make sure the Starbucks Christmas cups are Christmassy enough?
One thing he said about like gay marriage was that marriage is set apart because it's distinct, it's different. The marital relationship between a man and a woman is so distinct that it's given the name marriage. And the reason he gave, which I think is very true, is
whatever else you can say about this extraordinary feature of the man-woman relationship, we must at least agree that this feature, that is the feature that allows the relationship to literally create a whole other person, sets it apart
But even then, like, that argument wouldn't really go for a lot of people who would disagree with him, just because if we go back to the abortion issue, having children has been, instead of becoming something that is holy, it's now something that just like, oh, well, if you don't even want to have children, that's not a problem at all. So like when you de-emphasize the importance of procreation, again, this is a situation that can result
and you make
from
it convenient, as in it's an option.
Right. Instead of just something beautiful and necessary, it all breaks down from kind of like that source.
Yep. And another thing he said that I really emphasized is that, you know, you cannot achieve the truth if we ignore it. If you don't even know what truth is, and your truth is different from my truth, you know, how are we supposed to achieve it if we ignore what the actual freestanding truth is?
Mm-hmm. And you can feel as fuzzy as you want, but that doesn't make it right, you know.
Truth is what is coherent with reality.
There you go. Get all philosophical on me.
All philosophical.
So yeah, again, I think his talk was very good, although I would say it was not perfect. One of the things particularly he said was giving, in the question and answer section, I believe, talking about left-wing issues of disagreement, and he said, I don't think they're right on anything.
Put ourselves in the shoes of a standard liberal college student, if we can bear to do that for a moment. They've been living their whole life under a lie. They're wrong about everything they believe. They're wrong about literally everything.
That might seem like I'm trying to be incredibly nice and just be like, oh, well, they're kind of right on something. I mean, I do believe that people who disagree with me are right on some things. I think that actually adds to the gravity of the situation, in the sense that if I was to look at religion as an example in this case, a lot of different religions have many different elements of truth. But combined with those elements of truth are things that are not true. And that can sometimes make the truth dangerous, because the truth draws people in. So they'll present these elements of truth and they'll be like, oh, well, these things are true. But then they'll be caught into buying into the lie of it by not thinking or doing enough research or whatever it may be. So like, I don't think it's fair at all to go out and say they're not right about anything. They need to completely change their view on absolutely everything. Another one of the things he was saying was just like, we shouldn't worry at all about hurting other people's feelings. In a sense, that can be correct, but in another sense, it's not necessarily. So we should not be talking to people and have one of our goals be, have I offended them yet? If you're talking very calmly and collectively, and just because you said something that is true, but they disagree with, and they're just offended that, okay, come what may, like, you can't help it. It happens. On the other hand, there are people you can have a rational conversation with and talk about things and disagree with things, and them not be their feelings hurt. And I think if that's a possible route to take, where you don't water down the truth, but you're also not being like in their face about things or being more blunt than you need to be, then I think you should take that road.
Humanize the person you're dialoguing with. Don't make them an enemy. Don't make them a straw man you can cut down, because I think the only way you can change a person's heart or their mind is to dialogue with them as another human person. Having that element of respect is really important. Now, is that saying that you can't say that's wrong? No. But you can also, be kind of charitable about it. Someone brought up the question of when people who experience transgenderism ask them to use their specific pronouns. He said,
there is no scenario where we should use someone's preferred pronoun if the pronoun is a lie.
In my personal experience in meeting someone who was transgender, the only way you're going to reach out to them in any way is to approach them on their terms. That's the only way you're going to get a conversation. You can't completely ignore and cut off this group by refusing to refer to them in the way that they feel most comfortable. And by no means does that mean that you are completely compromising your views, because the only way you can have a dialogue is if they want to talk to you back. In my experience with this person, we became friends and we had common interests as well. Mm-hmm. And when they would talk to some of their friends and say, oh, well, I'm going to go to see this with Aimee, they'd be like, well, what do you mean? Because she's this and that. I didn't think you would be friends with her. And they said, well, she's nice. She doesn't throw things in my face and I feel comfortable being around her, and she's not a threat. She respects me and such. I just want to meet people and bring God to them in any way that I can.
So he also gave a 3-point plan on different things we can do, I guess, to bring God back. That's kind of what I was thinking, to bring God back into society.
There is actually something you can do.
Right. And
there is hope here.
The first thing he said, adding a little comedic effect to it is,
when college students come up to me or young people and they say, what's the best thing I can do to fight the culture war? I say, well, have some babies. Not now, I mean, not like right in front of me, but just...
Get married and have kids. Raise good, holy families and spread that to society. Because if you think about it, I mean, if that's the single cell of society, as John Paul II refers to it, then creating more of those and making them holy is extremely important into changing our culture.
To add to that, I would say if that is your vocation, then do pursue that.
Absolutely.
In a holy way.
Because we need priests too.
The second thing was he put it in a way to engage, but then back off. The engage part is to engage in dialogue, speak the truth, live your beliefs. He gave the example of if he took away the label of being Catholic or Christian or anything, would his life still reflect that?
If somebody were to come into my house or just watch me walk around for an hour, would they assume I'm Catholic, or would they think, well, he's just like everybody else?
He also said to back off as well. And when he says that, he meant to be aware of the culture, but also to step back. When he says to live your beliefs, he said it's important because we're not to conform to this age. Don't take on the characteristics of the culture. Don't use the language. Be aware of it, but don't use it. Don't dress that way. Don't act that way. And we're not called to stand above. We're called to stand apart.
Honestly, something if I would just add to it, don't be prideful about it in the bad sense, because it ain't your doing. The fact we know the truths that we do have, a lot of it is because of divine revelation. We wouldn't even have an idea about literally who God is without him coming to earth to tell us in the person of Jesus Christ.
The very last thing was to pray, which sounds like, well, yeah, duh, we're Christians. That's obviously what you do when you're faced with the situation. But to put it in perspective, he quoted scripture and said,
there's that passage in James, which was, I think was written for us. It says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You do not have because you do not ask. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask wrongly.
If you don't ask in the first place, how are you supposed to get something you don't ask for?
And I think a key element which I would add to what was said is improve your prayer life. So if it's kind of like hectic, try to get a regular schedule where you're normally going and talking to our Lord out of love and going through not only the one stage of prayer, which is petition, but thanksgiving and praise and the other elements of prayer that there are. Like, grow your prayer life. When you read about the lives of the saints that like changed the world or the church and called other people to holiness, like most of the time there's always that similarity. They had some sort of a prayer life. Now, not all of them prayed 12 hours a day, but they had some sort of prayer life which they were able to use to help influence others. So like trying to work on first establishing a prayer life and then growing that. And it takes time, but like that's something over time to try and establish and to just slowly work at.
So the next question that comes to me is, how do I improve my prayer life? There's actually a collaboration of different Catholic YouTubers as to, what is their prayer life like. I can link in the description several of their videos so you can look up their different examples, because prayer life is different for every person. And so having multiple examples of what other people do might be helpful for you to tailor your own prayer life. I personally try to pray in the morning as soon as I wake up, and the last thing I do before I go to bed. If I have my set morning time and set evening time, bookend my day, start with God, end with God. That's great.
I'd say in summary that he had a lot of really good points and a lot of things that I think a lot of Catholics need to listen to, in the sense that we are often concerned about being too nice. But at the same time, I would say that it wasn't perfect and that there is a certain amount of distinguishing between the person and the actions that they commit that needs to be made and needs to be emphasized, and a little bit more reaching out with a hand that is actually communicating, wanting to spread the truth, as opposed to seemingly just like, you're all messed up and need to completely turn your life around. I think there needs to be more of, again, what seems like a loving hand that really genuinely desires. I'm not saying he doesn't genuinely desire, simply that to make the impression of that would be something I would say was needed.
I really enjoyed hearing him talk. It was incredible also to meet him, because he really honestly wanted to answer questions that people had and kind of get to know people a bit, not just like, hi, thanks for coming, next. When I found out he was writing a book, I bought it. And I actually brought it with me tonight. It's called The Unholy Trinity. I brought it in hopes that he would sign it, which he actually did, which was super awesome. Getting to be prompted in thought, it was very thought-provoking. That's something I absolutely encourage because you can't stay stagnant in your little bubble of what's going on, what are your influences. You need people to help continue to grow your intellect so you can continue to grow your approach and adapt. So I really felt like it was very formative and that it was well worth the trip for sure.
All right, well, thank you all for watching this vlog, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.
I'm also wondering what is the future of the Matt Walsh blog?
Well, I'm moving into the forest. I'm quitting everything. This is my last time out.